Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary to share another contemplative focus with you in the hopes that you might find some value in it and it might stimulate you to keep on meditating or to start meditating. But at any rate, the focus that I want to share with you today is the perfect creation. I am me. The experience you're having of yourself is the perfect creation. We often hear the statement, or I have often heard this statement from my teacher, there is only one. And that means exactly what it says. There is only one consciousness. It makes no difference what you call it, source consciousness, God, or life. It is all, and it includes me. I am me. I am consciousness. I am source. So, if everything is part of the one that is everything, then we are all perfectly orchestrated by the creation, by the creator of this creation. Which reminds me of an experience I have very often of seeing nature, being out in nature and watching it and being tuned into just how perfect nature is and how all the creatures in nature are doing what they do and they all have some kind of an interconnection. I look at a forest and I see squirrels and I see birds and I see other animals like the deer and so forth, and they're all doing something in there that's part of what a forest is. They're helping the trees, they're helping the plants, they're helping whatever, but they all work together. It's a synergistic, perfectly created and coordinated scene. And also, even when there's what we consider to be like a disaster or some huge change, like climate change, maybe something like that, it's the warp and the woof of all creation. Because, in my experience, the only constant that you can count on in life is that everything is going to change. It's constantly moving because we live in a, let's call it a time field where we have a moment, then we have another moment, then we have another, and on and on and on. And there's just nothing we can do to stop it. So everything is moving. But what that movement is that it's constantly upgrading and evolving itself. And we are that consciousness that's doing this. But we're having the experience through our ego of being a separate human being, kind of like being in the river but not being able to control the river, and we either swim or we sink, right? But that's really not quite the way it is. It's that we are also the river, and we are also the banks of the river and the mountains around it and all that. You can't separate yourself from what is, but we do separate ourselves in terms of how we perceive ourselves and how we experience ourselves in relation to that perception. It's the power of the mind, and it's a very powerful creative tool because if we're the same source creation, if we are consciousness and we put our power into what we think, if that's our focus, then that's what we're going to create. And so part of being a meditator and part of looking at contemplations like this is to help you focus on your experience of life and yourself, to come to a deeper level of awareness about what are you creating and why are you creating? What's the source of your movie? Who's shooting that film anyway? It's you, but you may not be aware of the script, which is an unconscious script oftentimes that we have picked up somewhere in our early days of growing up. And it has gone into the unconscious mind, and yet it's still there, it's still active, and it's still running its script. And whenever it's triggered, that's the experience we have. So we have our lives, and we have the repetition of such scripts in our life. And because we have that and because we don't like some of it and some of it doesn't work for us anymore, we come to this conclusion that somehow we're a victim of life, even though consciously or unconsciously we created our role in it and our experience of it. So, what it's pointing to here, of course, is to become a meditator and to go deep into yourself and to do a lot of self examination, to question yourself, to dig in deep and find out, where did this come from? Where did that come from? Why does this person make me feel uncomfortable? Why does that person make me feel like I want to be with them forever? And what generates the difference there, huh? And if you do this with consistency, if you meditate, you become subtle. If you meditate and you become more aware, you realize that there's bits and pieces that are constantly recreating parts of an experience that you had maybe when you were a little kid. There was a time and an exercise that I did here once in my early days here where we had a program here and we were to pick out somebody, a guest maybe, or somebody, but somebody we didn't like, or someone who triggered something in us, and then we wanted to go talk to that person, and then the idea was to explore where that response in relation to that person came from. See, this is an exercise in becoming more, bringing the unconscious to the conscious. And so I did, and I found a guy. There was a man in the audience there, and somehow I didn't know him at all. I'd never met him before, and yet I had an emotional response to his presence that was negative. It just didn't make me feel good. So I walked over and introduced myself, and I worked with him. And as I spoke with him and told him what I was experiencing because of the way he looked or whatever, suddenly I had a recalled incident in my life when I was pre-high school, and I confronted a gentleman that looked very much like this man, and the person that I confronted at that time in my life was kind of demanding and wanted me to do something I didn't want to do, to help him fix something on his car, and I was just walking down the street trying to go somewhere. Anyway, it upset me, and I pretty much just got away from that man as fast as I could because he wasn't something that I wanted to deal with at that time at my age. So I had that fear-based encounter, and I created in that encounter an association, of course, with his looks. He was a male, he was so old, blah, blah, blah. And this person here that I was speaking with at this program resembled him enough that triggered that memory. And when I looked at that, I came to that realization. I said, okay, well, that's what's going on here. I'm referencing something that happened 30, 40 years ago, and yet it's acting as if it's happening now. So this is how we create ourselves as something other than a perfect creation. We have memory, and we have good memories, and we have bad memories. But as long as we're coming from memory, it's all a repetition. It's all kind of compulsive experience. This person reminds you of that situation reminds you of something else, not the one that's happening now, but something that happened before, or something that was like that before. And so your script is constantly coming up in different ways. My script does that unless I catch it, and life seems to be kind of repetitive that way, although we don't quite see it that way. All of our experiences in the moment are unique, and they are unique, but we're coloring it with our past, our memory. And so we're coloring pretty much most of what we experience in life after we become educated and conscious enough to speak, and we have some command of language and so forth, and we're interacting. And we're really basically kind of running our scripts over and over and over again, and we're trying to sort out the people we want to be with versus the ones we don't want to be with. It's an exclusive and judgmental experience of life. And so we're not being the perfect creation for ourselves because we're not coming from that source of who we are. And as we meditate and go deeper and deeper and keep uncovering this stuff and you know, undoing it, because the very act of becoming aware of your scripts kind of disempowers it, because you see what it is and for what it is, and then you don't put your power in it anymore. The power that you put in it when you were, in my case, in this example, I was too young to have any understanding what was going on, and the situation came down the way it did, and I put a lot of power into that because I didn't know what that was, and I generated a very strong memory, and then when it went unconscious, it was just hanging out waiting for its turn to show up. And much of my life, as I reviewed it, was like that. It was just like seeking out what I was comfortable with and avoiding what I wasn't comfortable with, rather than seeing everything as the perfect creation that it was, and that had nothing to do with me other than the fact that I was witnessing or interacting with someone or something or involved in some situation. But it was also a very perfect creation, and it could have been experienced that way if I had been more aware, if I was more conscious of my memory, of my scripts, and had wiped them out. It's like the famous quote from Socrates, that the only thing that I know is that I know nothing. And basically, that's where you really want to go with yourself in your meditation practice. Because once you do that, once you get to that nothingness, then you see everything for what it is instead of what it was. You're not coloring it with your memory. You're not trying to create something fear-based in yourself. And you're seeing something that you can accept as a new experience, as a perfect creation, and that your part in it is also a perfect you in that moment. And that's a much, much more celebratory way to go through life. So meditate, meditate, meditate. I always say that because I heard it so often, and I still hear it because I want to hear it. I hear it because that practice has done more for me than anything else I've ever done in my life, and it's brought me more joy and more peacefulness in myself. And then there's more peacefulness I have to share with other people in my life. So that's the contemplation for today. And as always, these contemplations, they're tools. They're tools for becoming more aware, more conscious of you, and more aware of you as the perfect creation that you are. And so being yourself is pretty much the job of being here in this creation, being a human being on earth. To be yourself is much more difficult than we give it. And we assume that we are ourselves, but we're assuming that we're referencing all kinds of attachments and identifications that we picked up along the way that actually smothered who we are and hides who we are. And then we try to protect that because, gee, that's me, and I want to protect me. I want to keep myself whole, and yet what I'm trying to keep whole is a fragmented, disjointed illusion of who I am. So anyway, that's the gist of the perfect creation, I am me, that I'm sharing today, and I hope it is some use to you. I encourage you to explore yourself, to put yourself through the Socratic process. Don't take anything for granted and question everything that you experience. And then you'll start to dig out what was unconscious and you'll make it conscious. So that's it for today. I will see you again next week with another contemplation to share with you. Thank you so much for being here and watching today.